All right, people. We have astrology vlog number 5 coming in hot. I'll share my screen as always and we'll get started. Again, today we'll be working with a short-term transit. This time I'm not even going to put up my chart initially. So you're going to see that sometimes you don't need to include your chart. You can just think about the transiting chart by itself. Now, but still, if you include your chart, it's going to add important details that help you place exactly what's going on much more neatly, but still you don't need it. So this morning we have the transiting moon in Gemini, making an exact square to Saturn in Pisces. And when I woke up, I went on my phone and I logged on to X. And on X, I was inundated with, let's say, political information. I'm going to stay away from the word propaganda, but what I actually felt was tremendous amounts of conflict. And every single post that I was reading was very polarized, totally negative, and with this intense energy of violence. And especially from people who have a platform, have a voice, and have millions of followers. And they're making commentary that is extremely concerning. And I felt like, oh my goodness, this is this is kind of scaring me. And I told myself, yeah, it's probably best if I just log off of X and do not log back on. And there was, videos of people screaming at each other in interviews where they just don't get along. And I was kind of surprised, honestly. One of the thoughts I was having was, as a younger person, I thought, wow, we're in 2025. We're in the 21st century. We're not barbaric anymore. We're going towards the era of like enlightenment. And then, when I see the stuff that's going on today and I see how the world is kind of in disrepair and everyone is interacting without really being open, everyone is kind of closed off to each other. That's what I feel. You either take this position very strongly or you take that position and you're against each other. And it's kind of like this big, chaotic, confusing mess. And also, of course, what's also relevant is when you see some of these posts, it's obvious that things are taken out of context. And so you kind of just show something brief and you do it in a way to confuse the narrative. And so there's the Gemini, which is really just the relay of information. And there's the Pisces, which is the chaotic mess in this case. Pisces is many other things. Okay, and so is Gemini. And the moon Saturn, just this feeling of contraction, this feeling of fear, this feeling of, oh my God, what's happening in the world? And just notice that the square was exact. So that's the peak of that transit. And so just in that moment, I was kind of interfacing with all of that. And then I was like, okay, I spent half an hour on there, and then I felt how my brain was fried with that information. I felt how I was kind of just everywhere. I wasn't really grounded in this reality. So I felt like, let's just come back to the present. And another thing that was kind of interesting now that I think about it, there was a very intense snowstorm. And so it was like you could see the wind going, and then there was just no, and then it was also kind of raining. And so it was like this big, it was like this, it was just a lot going on outside. And so you could see the moon in Gemini, the wind, because it's an air sign, with Saturn and Pisces, the water and the snow. And if you see what's happening outside now, there's just snow covering the ground everywhere. So it's like like I'm seeing like a totally different snowland, which wasn't the case yesterday. Now I'm going to put up my chart and I'll show you something else. Hmm. First, I'm going to remove the moon and then I'm going to add her back. And I'm going to make another vlog about this at a later time because it's a very long subject that I would like to take my time with. But you can notice that transiting Saturn at 26 Pisces is squaring my Venus in the second house at 24 Gemini. So that's been a long transit I've been under for the past year. And in that past year, I had a lot of work to do over how much I value my service and what I do and how I do it and da 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 da. And I started by not charging anything. And then I started by charging people whatever they want to pay. And then I started charging a fixed price of $60. And then lately I was feeling how, okay, this is not enough money for me to survive. I need to charge more. And I was sitting with that for, let's say, a few weeks already. And you can see that from the fact that Saturn is moving away from the square to my Venus now. It's kind of like that period of really receiving tremendously little is closing out. And I've kind of become very confident in what I'm doing. So I know there's a lot of value in it, even though there's many questions about it. Because at the end of the day, when you meet the audience, you have to understand their psychology and what do they get out of it and how do I connect with them. So there's a lot of that 11th house going on. Never mind, Saturn is moving away, and so I feel how, okay, it's time for me to increase my prices and start to make a little more money so I can live a normal life. And I've been sitting with that for a few weeks. I didn't make a move, but you can see today the transiting moon was conjunct my Venus, which is kind of like the start of a brief new sequence, right? Because the moon has a very short cycle, it's like 28 days. And I increased my prices. So my readings used to be 60, now they're 100. The YouTube readings used to be free, now they're $30. And so I edited my website also. I went to my website and I made those changes be reflected. And there's the Gemini as well. And there's the second house. And there's Venus. But I'll add another little detail. As I was editing my website, um, when I make this the spacing, because I did the YouTube readings, and that's like a bolded big letters. And then there's the space beneath, and that's where I write, okay, these, discounted readings to be published on YouTube or whatever. And I couldn't figure out how to get the right spacing between the headline and then the description. Because the spacing between headline and description was different from my other offerings. And so I wanted it all to match. But I couldn't, and I'm not very good with that stuff, despite having all my air sign stuff. You know what? I'm just not skilled with website design. Maybe I will be if I put some time into it. But there was the moon in Gemini squaring Saturn. I just couldn't figure out how to make this change in the text editor. And so I was like, okay, it is what it is. Moving on. And the last thing I'll note, and again, this has to do with Saturn squaring my Venus and Gemini over the long term from the 11th house. I live stream pretty frequently. And I've been having a hard time live streaming sometimes in the past year because I had to really learn how to speak to people, how to make space for the way I want to express, how to navigate their questions that for me need a lot of time to be answered, and so on and so forth. And today, the moon is conjunct my Venus in Gemini. And Venus in Gemini is the one that's very good at talking, just to make it simple. And so today I live streamed and I had a lot of fun. I felt how I was being very nice. It was going super smoothly. And I just genuinely enjoyed connecting with all those people. And the square to Saturn, I would say, is on two levels. One of them is like the recognition of all the work I've done. Again, because Saturn is now moving away. In the sense that when I'm answering their questions and I'm interacting with them, I'm much more firm about how I'm speaking. And I'm answering questions without giving them the answer maybe they're looking for, but rather the one that I know is right. So I don't try to please too much anymore. It's more like I'm searching for what's really true in my opinion and giving just that. And people were really enjoying themselves. And they were like, "Oh, okay, I like that answer. Thank you." So I was being a bit stern also, but in a very playful, humorous, nice, thoughtful way. And the last detail is, and this happens quite frequently, because you see the transiting moon is in Gemini. Of the people that were interacting in the chat, and I would say that was maybe 5 or 6 of them actively in total, 3 of them mentioned that they have their moon in Gemini. And so between them, there was a lot of banter going on. Okay. Um, let's leave it at that for now. I see you guys' comments on YouTube, so I know that it's resonating with some of you, and I'm happy about that. And I hope that as you're watching these videos and you're seeing how the astrology is expressing itself in my life, that you're also, again, trying to do some work and asking yourself through your chart how the transits are expressing in your life. Right. So that's the work we really do. That's the real practice of astrology, is to do a personal investigation of what's happening in the transits and do they really have a correlation with real life events? And to what extent do they have a correlation with real life events? Is it one to one? And in that practice, the mind goes on a wonderful journey of discovering the nature of existence and the architecture of reality, which is so, 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 so powerful on the process of liberation, enlightenment, whatever we want to call it. Good. Thanks for being with me, and I will see you in the next vlog. All right.